So today we're going to do the handover video on this Swift Sundance 590 RS. We're going to start on the outside and then we're going to move on to the inside. Before I continue with the video, I just want to make you aware that this vehicle is still due a valet. I just wanted to get this video out to you before you come to collect the vehicle. So if you do notice any areas that need a valet, it will have one. As I say, I just wanted to get this video out to you before you come to collect it. Now, coming over to the passenger side, you will notice that you've got a little cap here that releases, and this is where you can fill the vehicle up with diesel. Opening up the passenger side, you'll also notice that your bonnet release catch is just located here. Pull that to release the front bonnet. Before we go on to the bonnet, you'll also notice that you've got Remis cab blinds fitted to this vehicle. You've got them in your two windows along with your big front window at the front. All you need to do is simply unclip like so and then pull the blind up just like that. And then using the magnetic strip, they just connect into place. You've got the same here, and again, using the magnetic strip, they just connect into place. As I say, these will ensure that you can black out the entire cab. And you've of course got the same again on this front window. All you need to do to release this one is just flick down these switches. As you can see, these little clips just flick down. That will release the blind and then connect them up, and they meet in the middle because you've got the other one on that side. Now, as a rule of thumb with the motorhome, if something feels like it's being forced, you're probably doing something wrong, so try not to force anything as it will consequently break. The same goes for these blinds. Just be delicate with these and let them connect in just like so. Now, coming underneath the bonnet, the main things that you need to know underneath here is if the vehicle ever needs to be jump started. Now, if you are jump starting the vehicle, your negative terminal is just here as indicated by the sticker below, and your positive terminal is just located in the engine bay itself. As you can see, there's a little plus sign on this cap. Flick the cap up and you can connect your positive terminal just onto there. Now, they're the main things that you need to know, but just to point out a couple more things, you can see you've got your engine oil here along with your dipstick below. Your brake disc fluid is up here along with your engine coolant. Your power steering fluid is just there, and then right in the corner is where your washer fluid is located. Walking round to the side of the vehicle brings us on to your fill up point for your fresh water. You'll also notice before moving on to that, you've got a little adapter here. This is a point for a 12 volt pump. So say for example you was on a campsite and you was connected up to 12 volt and you wanted, you was on a smart site where it would simply fill up the vehicle with fresh water. You can connect a 12 volt pump into here via the external socket there. Now 9 times out of 10 that will not be the case, so you don't need to worry about this. What you will do is use your key to unlock this and remove the cap, and that will gain you access into your fresh water tank. Using a food grade hose pipe, you can then put your hose pipe into the tank and fill up the tank. Obviously ensure that all your drain down points are closed, and we'll move on to drain down points shortly, but just ensure that they are all closed to ensure that the water can be filled up. Now when it's running out and overspilling, you know that you've filled up your tank, and then all you need to do is just bob the cap on and then you're good to go. Now I personally don't recommend drinking out of the fresh water tank, although you're fine to drink it when the water is boiled or wash with the water. What I personally recommend is if you're drinking any water, just take bottled water with you. You can buy purifying tablets for these, but as I say, to drink directly out of the tank, I would not recommend it. The reason I also say fill this tank up with a food grade hose pipe is that will ensure that no bacteria is built up in the pipe for when you're putting the water into the tank. Moving further down, next up you can see that you've got your hookup cable for your mains electric. At the moment this does have a cover on it, you can see it's just snapped, so we've got another one on order for you, and that will cover this area up for when you're travelling, and then when you're on site, flip this open and this will gain you access to your 230 volt. Using a mains hookup lead, you can then connect into here and then feed that into your post on the site, and that will enable the vehicle to have a 230 volt power feed and will allow you to use your sockets on the inside of the vehicle. Above that, as indicated by the sticker, this is where your gas locker is, and this is where you can stick gas bottles in the vehicle to run anything off the gas. And with that open, you can see that already in here you've got a gas regulator. All you'll need is a pigtail which will connect into here, which will then feed into your gas bottle, and then simply turn the gas on at the bottle, and that will release the gas into the vehicle. Now please ensure that when travelling the gas is turned off. You should never travel with the gas on when travelling, because if you're involved in a collision it's obviously very dangerous. So only turn the gas on when you've arrived to your campsite or your pitch for the night. Next up, underneath, brings us on to your first drain down point, which as you can see is just on this grey tap. This is your wastewater drain down point. Now you have 3 main drain down points in the vehicle. You've got one on the outside, the other 2 are located on the inside of the vehicle, and as I say, we'll get onto them shortly. What you'll need to do is when you're on site, there'll be a big grid that you can drive over. Simply turn this valve like so, and that will empty the wastewater out into that tank. If you empty the majority of the water into the grid, and that you can then leave the drain down point open, because as you're travelling home, that residual water will make its way out of the tank because of the vibrations of the road. Now with your drain down points, it's really important that they're drained down in the colder months. It doesn't matter so much in the warmer months, but please get into the habit of getting everything drained down before moving on in the vehicle, because if you leave water in here, it runs the risk of freezing, which can then lead to cracked pipes, and it can obviously ruin and destroy the system on board the vehicle. Now one final thing is, as this tank is underslung, what I personally recommend is leaving this tank open in the colder months, that is. In the warmer months you're okay, but this tank could potentially freeze when you're using the vehicle as it is underslung. So if you get a big bucket and just stick that underneath there, leave that tank open, all the wastewater that goes down your sink plugs and out into your tank will then feed into that bucket, and it will just ensure that there's no wastewater remaining in the vehicle. Moving to the back, you can see that you've got your cassette toilet locker, and with the door open will gain you access to the cassette. Now firstly, you've got a flip out funnel here. Simply remove the cap, and this is where you can pop in the vehicle's flush. You can buy this at any accessory shop or online, and it's just a Thetford flush, and all that does is you just pop it into there, and it means that it just when you flush the system, it will stop any odours from escaping, makes it smell a little bit nicer. And then below that is obviously the cassette itself. Now the cassette, to remove this, all you need to do is press up on this handle and then slide towards you. And with the cassette pulled out, you can then begin to empty. All you'll need to do is pull out the funnel like so, remove the green cap on the top, and using the green button at the back, that will release an internal vacuum which will allow you to empty the entire contents of the cassette. Once you've done that, you can put a bit of water in here to wash out the system, and then you'll be good to go. If you are using blue fluid, which will allow you to break down the waste, it's required when using one of these cassettes. That blue fluid can just simply pop into the top of this cap here. There's a little measurement on there which will indicate how much to put in, and then pop the cap back on, and that will ensure that any waste that goes into here is broken down. And that's all you really need to know. You will notice you've got this green valve here which actually turns. This is what makes contact with the blade on the inside. Now, before removing the cassette, you should always ensure that the blade on the toilet is closed. Now, I'll show you where that blade is when we move on to the inside of the vehicle. But if that blade is open, when you come to remove the cassette, it will get jammed. And sometimes if that is pulled, you'll break the system entirely. So please ensure that the blade on the toilet is closed. And as I say, I'll show you where that is when we're on the inside of the vehicle. But as mentioned, because of this makes contact with the blade and allows you to open and close it. This should always stay in this position. There should be no need for you to move this or turn it. If that is off slightly and you go to put the cassette back in, it will subsequently break. So please ensure that remains in that position, and as I say, isn't moved or tampered with, because you want to make sure when popping it back into there, it slides straight in without any issue. Once you've emptied the cassette and you're ready to pop it back in, simply line it back up, slide it in until this green tab locks into place, so then the cassette is nice and solid in its area and ready for transit. Moving to the back of the vehicle, you can see that you've got this crash bar fitted, which is nice and handy. You've also got a reversing camera, which is just mounted here, showing you the back of the bumper, as well as your bike rack, which is just located on the back. Now I can show you this on handover, but all you'll need to do with the bike rack is release these handles, so then this can then slot down, and then as you can see, you've got the rails which are each for the bikes. The bike wheel will then slot into here, and then using these tie downs, they will loop through the wheels and allow you to tighten it into place. You've then got these bike rack arms, which will then connect to the bike rack, to the bike itself, and again work the exact same as the wheels. You can just use these tie down points to tie it into position and make sure it's nice and secure when you're traveling. And as I say, I can show you that when you come to collect if you'd like me to. Now moving to the side of the vehicle, you can see this vehicle is fitted with a Thule awning. I will send you a separate video showing you how the awning works. As you can appreciate, it's a little bit difficult for me to do so with just one hand, but I will show you how that is done on a separate video. Now, the rule of thumb with an awning, if it is a windy day, just take the awning back in. You should never want to use the awning when it's windy. As you can appreciate, this is like having a massive sail on the side of your vehicle. So if you do get any wind underneath here, it could potentially blow up and take the entire awning with it, damaging your vehicle and also other vehicles which might be nearby. So please ensure that if it's windy, that awning goes back in. Now the awning can also be used when it is a wet day, but if it is caught in the rain, you'll need to ensure that at some point you bring it out just so it can dry out. You don't want to be using the awning, you don't want to, have that awning wet for a long period, as it will lead to mould and it will ultimately decay the canvas which is on there. So just ensure if it's caught in the rain, you pull it back out on a dry day just to dry it out. Now on the side, you've got your entrance step here into your habitation door. We'll move into there shortly. You can also notice that you've got these vents here. These are for your fridge. Now with your fridge, if it is a really sunny day, obviously this is where the fridge pulls its air from to cool the contents inside. So if it is a really sunny day, perhaps take the awning out or keep this area under shade just to allow the fridge to run a little bit more effectively. And as I say, this is where it pulls all the air from. Next up, you've then got your truma vent. Taking the vent off will reveal the chimney in essence. So when you are using the vehicle and you're running the heating on the water, and the heating in the vehicle, you need to remove this cap, so then this area can breathe. So when you're travelling with the vehicle, this cap goes on to protect any dirt from getting inside, and then when you're stationary on site, this can simply be pulled off and allow the vent to breathe. In essence, that's the vehicle's chimney, so just bear that in mind. When you're ready for transit, that just pops on and clips into place. Now please be aware that if you do leave this cap on and you try to heat the vehicle, it will not allow you. It'll fail 3 times, and once you've done that, you'll need to reset the system. So please get into the habit of removing this before using any of the heating. The best thing to do is when you're on site, remove that, and when you're traveling, stick it back on. And finally, you've got your locker here for a bit of excess storage. It's quite a decent bit of space in here. You've also got a little plastic panel underneath here. In there conceals your leisure battery. Rightio, so we're now on the inside of the vehicle, and as you walk through the habitation door, you've got your control panel which is just above you. To turn the power on, simply select the power button. You can see that will turn on your interior lights. Now the power button is the master switch to everything on the inside of the vehicle, and as you say, activates everything. If you want to turn your lights on the inside, you can see you just click that button there that says lights, and that will turn on and off your lights around the vehicle. This power button can then be turned on or off to basically isolate the entire thing. Next to that, you've then got your awning light button. Click that. On the outside, you've got a little light just above your door, so you can turn that on and off on here. You've then got your water pump button just down here. Click that to turn your pump on. Now when you're on site and you're filled up with water, what you'll need to do is click your pump on and then go to all of your taps, including your shower, and turn your tap on and then turn it to hot. Now what that will do is it will pull fresh water from the fresh water tank into the boiler and then out of the tap. It will spurt and splutter, and then when it's running steadily, you've primed your system for your hot water. When you've done that, flick it over to cold and do the exact same, and then when it's running steadily, you've primed your system for your cold water, and then you'll be good to go. Now obviously before doing that, ensure that all your drain down points are closed, because if one of them is open, you'll go to turn this on and it won't get up to pressure. It won't be able to pressurise or purge, so please ensure that all of them are drained down, and obviously ensure that you're only running the pump when you've got fresh water in the tank. If you run that water pump without any water, you'll simply burn out the pump, so please ensure that that is done, and you've got water in the tank, so you're good to go. Now the reason I tell you to turn it on to hot first is, as I say, that will prime the boiler, and then as I say, exit out the tap. Now if that's the first thing you do when you're on site, when you turn your heating on, it will then start to heat that water up. Now it's going to take about 30 to 40 minutes to heat that water up. Your water in your boiler will hold about 10 litres of fresh water, so naturally it's going to take a bit of time for it to heat up. Now I'll show you how to obviously operate the heating shortly, but if you turn that heating on and prime your system, and if that's the first thing you do before you're ready on site, by the time you've got everything prepped with the vehicle, the water will be up to temperature and ready to use. And as I say, do that on all your taps. Now back up to the top, this pump can then, once you prime the system, be left on, because on each of your taps you've got a micro switch which will activate and deactivate the pump whenever you need it. So just like it is at home, when you turn the tap on, your pump will activate and pull the water through. The only time you need to turn that pump off is if you've not got any water in the vehicle. Next up, you've then got your battery level, your battery select. So you can either run the lighting and all your 12 volt appliances off vehicle battery or leisure battery. You should never ever run it off your vehicle battery. Always leave it on the leisure battery. Leave it as it is, like so. If you run it off the vehicle battery, what could happen is if your lights are left on for a long period, it will drain your vehicle battery of all of its power, and you won't be able to get going anywhere. So please ensure that that battery select always remains on the leisure battery and not the vehicle battery, for that very reason. Now your view levels are really important. If you click that view levels, it will tell you all the levels in the vehicle. On this side, you've got your leisure battery voltage. You've then got your freshwater tank capacity, and you can see at the moment it's reading green, so we're at 100% capacity there. On the other side, you've then got your wastewater tank with nothing in that tank, so nothing will drain out of there. So you can see it's reading empty. And then finally, click this again, you've got your vehicle battery level, which again isn't far off full either. So these gauges will just allow you to see the levels of the vehicle, the health of the batteries, and as I say, the water level, which will allow you to indicate whether you do need any water topping up in the vehicle. Before moving on from the panel as well, you have got a little indicator here that says mains. You get a green light on that when you are hooked up to mains electric. As you can see, I'm not plugged into anything at the moment, but when you are, simply that will light up green. Now moving round, you can see we're into your kitchen area. Before moving on to the kitchen, all your windows are fitted with fly screens and blackout blinds. So it's dead easy and dead handy to black out the entire motorhome. If you're wanting to open these windows as well, you can do by simply unhooking these and pushing the window outward like so. Now you can also leave these windows on venting, which will allow a little bit of airflow to come through, but please ensure when travelling all your windows are firmly sealed and closed, as you don't want to be travelling with any windows open. And that goes the same for the skylights as well, which are throughout this vehicle. As I say, if you get any bit of wind, it will just simply rip it off and pull it away. So please ensure that when travelling, all your windows are closed. Now in the kitchen, we've spoken obviously about priming your system and your tap. One thing to know, you've got a 230 volt socket in here. Now as I briefly mentioned on the outside, your 230 volt sockets will only operate when you're plugged into 230 volt mains electric. They will not operate when you're on your 12 volt leisure battery, so please bear that in mind. You've then got your hob. You've got one electric, which will again only work off your 230 volt electric when you're plugged in, and then you've got 3 gas burners. You've then got your oven and grill below. You've also got a great bit of storage in the kitchen area as well, and the same thing up here in your lockers. So before moving on from the kitchen, finally you've got your fridge. Now to operate this, it's dead easy. You've got a little power button here. Turn that power button on and that will activate the fridge. You've then got these buttons which will allow you to select through the options. Just got a better angle on it there. Now as you can see, using these buttons, simply flick through the options you've got. And then you've also got this here, this other button which will allow you to select the temperature of the fridge should you need to. Now I'm just going to power that off at the moment, as we don't want to run the fridge currently, as I've not got any power to the fridge and we don't want it to fault. But this is called a 3-way system. The reason it's a 3-way fridge is there's 3 ways to in essence power it. So you can either run it off gas, electric or 12 volt mains. 12 volt your 12 volt leisure battery. So when you're on site and you're hooked up, you'll of course run it off your 230 volt electric. When you're travelling, you'll then run it off your 12 volt leisure battery, and then when you're wild camping, i.e. not plugged in, you'll run it off your gas, which will be hooked up to the vehicle. Now, a lot of people think that when they're wild camping, this fridge can run off the 12 volt leisure battery. That isn't the case. If it was, it would simply drain all the battery of all of its energy and power, because it draws quite a lot, this fridge. So it will only allow you to run the fridge off the gas when you're not hooked up. Now with the ignition on, it will then allow you to run it off 12 volt. The reason for that is this vehicle has got a built-in alternator which will send power from the vehicle battery through the alternator and to the leisure battery, which will allow you to power the fridge. You need to ensure that whatever fuel you've got, you are selecting and it's the correct fuel to obviously power the fridge, because if you're trying to run the fridge with a fuel that you've not got, it will fault. And that's the reason why I've just turned the fridge off, because I've not got any gas to the vehicle, 230 volt or 12 volt supply. It won't allow me to run the fridge. Now the great thing with this is it's got an auto button, which you can select just on that little button there. If you leave it on auto, it will automatically assign whichever fuel you've got to power up the fridge, which is dead handy, and it should stop you from running into that issue of trying to run the fridge off power that you've not got. And to select that, all you do is just click this button a few times until you see the auto function, and it'll allow you to run it automatically off whichever fuel you've got. Above that, you've got your microwave. This is a 230 volt microwave, so again, will only work off 230 volt when plugged in. And up at the top, you've got a little bit of storage along with the power point with more sockets. Now moving on from the kitchen area, you can see that we've got the bathroom door open, which faces you as you walk in. Now as I say, we've talked about priming the system. One thing to bear in mind is this actually acts as the shower head as well as the tap, and that can just connect up to there. And then clicking that, as you can see, will allow you to run the water. You've also got this screen as well, which will pull across and protect this area from any water, and also your toilet, which is located back here. Now, the main things that you need to know on the toilet is the blade, which I mentioned on the outside. So when using the toilet, the blade needs to be open. To do that, simply pull towards you, and that will allow you to open the blade. That will ensure that all the waste will drop into the cassette, and then clicking your blue button, which is just down there, that will activate your flush and will flush the entire cassette. When it's full, you'll get a little indicator on there as well, but once you've flushed it, all you'll need to do is push that blade back, and that will close the cassette. Now, you push it back and close the blade for two reasons. The main reason being, of course, it stops any odours from escaping, but two is it also gets you into the habit of having that closed, so when you come to remove the cassette, you shouldn't run into any issues with that jamming. As I mentioned, just get into the habit of keeping that closed for that very reason. Now, one thing to mention, for this to operate the flush, you will need your pump on, which, as I say, is just on that control panel as shown. And when you do get a red light on here, just to empty the cassette. Moving away from the bathroom area and into here, you've got a bit of storage and a bit of hanging space in here. As you can see, you've got a really good bit of hanging space, and also located in here is your Vision Plus aerial, along with your motorhome Wi-Fi that has been fitted. Now, currently the motorhome Wi-Fi is linked up. You've got a little switch to turn it on and off. Leave that switch on. The same thing for the aerial. This red light is glowing to indicate that this is on. Now, you'll need your 12 volt on the panel for this to operate, so simply turn that on, and these will have the power to them. For your motorhome Wi-Fi, to turn this on, simply hold the power button, and that will eventually power up. Whilst we're waiting for that to power up, you'll notice that you've got the charger cable, which is underneath, along with these two cables, which will link through to the aerial itself. And when you're using your SIM card, all you'll need to do is simply pop this off. This is simply on a magnet. Take the back off it like an old phone, remove the battery, and then your SIM card will just pop into the back. When you put the battery back in, it'll be good to go. You can see there's no service registering currently on the panel, as with no SIM card which has been activated in here. But once you've got your SIM card in, it'll work perfectly. Now, right on the top, it's a little bit difficult to see. On here, you've got a menu button. Click that menu button. Click the menu button again, and this will allow you to select device info. Click device info, and then here we'll give you the password. But as I say, on handover, I'll show you more in depth on how that operates and how it works. The aerial is dead simple. You can just leave that as it is. You've got a little button in here to turn it on and off, but you should always leave that on. There's no need really for turning that off. Now, beneath that brings us on to your space heater. To turn this on, you've got a couple of options. So you can either run this off gas or electric. To run it off gas is this here. So all you'll need to do is turn this, and you can probably hear that that's trying to ignite, so I'll just turn that off. But that will start igniting. Once you've got gas flowing through the vehicle, it will then start heating the vehicle. To run it off electric, the panel is actually just around here, which I'll show you in a minute. But then once the space heater is running off electric, you can change the fan speed through here, and you can either set it to manual or auto, which will depend on the temperature in the vehicle. If it exceeds a certain temperature, it will automatically adjust the fan speed, whereas manual will allow you to change the fan speed manually. And then in the middle is the off. Now, if you are running that space heater off electric, as you can see, the control for that is just here. In the middle, it is off. You can then run it off 2 kilowatt electric, half a kilowatt electric, or 1 kilowatt electric, depending on where you are. If you're plugged into electric, this is the time when you can use this. This will again not run off your 12 volt battery. So when you're on a campsite as it indicates here, it will only run off 230 volt. Now 9 times out of 10 you'll run this off 2 kilowatt electric. It will get it up to temperature the quickest. If you are limited to half a kilowatt or 1 kilowatt electric, you are better off just running it off gas. It will get the vehicle up to temperature a lot quicker. So once you've done that, say for example you're on site and you've selected your 2 kilowatt electric, you've then got this dial where you can then turn it and change the temperature that you wish it to be on. Now underneath, you've then got your temperature, or heating rather, for the water. Your water heating can be run off gas or electric. Now to run the water off the electric is actually just located up here. Again, I'll move on to that shortly. But to run it off gas, it's dead easy, very similar to this. As indicated, the dial is switched to the 0 point. This indicates that that it's off. Simply flick that down. You can see there's a green light on here to flick it to gas. And then again, just like the space heater on the electric, you can then turn this to change the temperature should you need to. Now, if you are running the heater, the water heating rather, off electric, all you've got here, click this button, and this is for your water heater. Click that in for it to be activated. Now, as I say, I've not got any hookup points here, so I'm not plugged into 230 volt electric, hence why these aren't lighting up. But if I was, these will light up and will allow you to run the heating. Now you've also got a switch for the space heater as well, and as I say, you'll need that in. I'll leave that in for you if you are wanting to run it off electric. Realistically, these two can be left in at all times, because then depending on your situation, if you're plugged in, it will then stop you from having to manually click these in. They will already be on, ready for you when you're on site. And as I say, if you're running anything off your 230 volt electric, you will need to be plugged in. Failing that, if you're not, you'll need to run it off your gas. Now underneath here, the next couple of things you don't really need to know about, and these are really for the technicians when working on the vehicle. You've got the charger button here and the reverse polarity. These are really linked for the technicians when working on the vehicle, so don't worry about them buttons there. You don't need to click them in or click them out. Underneath is your trip box as well, so if the vehicle ever trips, you can come to here. You've also got a test button as well, which is quite handy. So say for example you're not getting any power in the vehicle, simply click that test button, and if these all trip, you know you're getting power to the vehicle. So it's therefore not a fault with the campsite you're on or a fault with the hookup cable, it is a fault with the vehicle itself. And it allows you to obviously isolate the issue. So from there you can then check your fuses. Your fuses are on the other side there. Now these are just normal generic fuses that you can pick up in Halfords. I recommend taking a spare set with you just in case you do blow a fuse. You can obviously change it. Then finally, up at the top, you've then got a system shutdown. If you're not using the vehicle for a long period, you can click this button here and that will shut down the entire unit. I don't personally recommend doing that. I recommend leaving it on at all times. So moving away from that, you can also see that you've got a big double bed up here. Your ladder is just located back there. I have pushed it up at the moment as this will allow you easy access into the cab, but all you need to do is simply pull that down. These are on just on gas struts, which will allow you to access your bed. And as I say, your ladders are back there, which just hook onto these points here, allowing you to crawl up easily. Now moving down back into your lounge area, you can see that you've got 2 seat belts at the back here, and this actually can transform into a bed. To do that, all you'll need to do is use the table, which will slot into the grooves here. That will create the base of the bed, and then using these cushions, they will drop in to infill to give you a double bed there. And what a lot of people do is they use this as a single. You do have the option of pulling these out to make a really large double and give you a little bit more space, but the vast majority of people will use this as a double and this as a single. And just like that, you can see I've just unhooked the table, I've pushed the leg into the table, and that just rests nicely onto them 2 grooves there. And as you can see, once you've slid down and got the table into position and slid down the foam inserts, that will create a nice big double bed. What I personally recommend is taking a mattress topper with you, which can lay on this surface. As you can appreciate, as these are cushions and seat bases, they do obviously have contours in the seats, so if you can take a nice mattress topper, it will just level out the surface. Now before I put this back, you can see that you've got really nice bit of storage underneath here, which is again also heated, so you can put all your kit in there should you need to. And just on the other side you can see you've got the same again, a little bit smaller, but again a great bit of storage. Now one thing I did forget to mention, to remove this table all you've got to do is slide this out like so, pop this leg up, and that leg will fold up like so, and that will allow you to, of course, pop the table into that little groove there. For transit, you then need to pop it back in and slide it back into that groove, so then it's ready to be used. So moving on from the lounge area, the lounge setup, you can see that in the floor you've actually got a hatch here. All you need to do is simply lift this up, and this will gain you access to your fresh water tank. This brings us on to your next drain down point. It's your second drain down point, in fact. Now all you need to do to drain this down is simply swivel and loosen the black cap, and attached to the black cap you might notice there's a bolt with a chain, and that links to a water bung, which will allow you to remove the bung and drain down the fresh water tank. It's dead easy, dead simple. Simply, as I say, rotate this, pull it, and that will release the water from the outside. To seal it back up, you just need to put that bung slash cork back into the hole. That will allow you to seal the tank and allow you to fill up the fresh water tank. And underneath here you can see I've just taken and removed the cushions on the side lounge. Just removed them. Underneath here on the right hand side you've got a really good bit of storage. That's the same cupboard that's actually accessed from the outside. You can see that your carpets are located in here. And then on the other side you've got the location of the boiler. Now to drain this down, all you'll need to do is use this yellow switch. This yellow toggle, all you'll need to do is simply flick up, and that will drain down the boiler. Flick it down to then seal it. So when the vehicle is in use and you want to use the boiler, all you'll need to do is keep it in this position, and then when you're draining it down, simply flick that up. I'll leave that up for the time being, and that will drain down all of the boiler, and it will drain out, as I say, into that big grid. Once you've drained down the majority of that water, as I mentioned on the outside, this will go for the fresh water tank as well. You can travel with all of the drain down points open, because as you're travelling home, all that residual water will ensure will make its way out of the tank, and it will ensure that there's no residual water in the system itself. Now on the other side you'll also notice that you've got some taps here. There's also a little diagram there. These are isolation valves and will allow you to isolate certain areas in the van, so you can either isolate the water heater or the fridge. You should never need to move them, they should always stay in this position. This is only again for the technicians when working on the vehicle. The main things that you need to know is obviously your drain down points, and of course operating the vehicle with the water and the pump, and of course your heating. Now that concludes the handover video on this Swift Sundance 590 RS. I hope you enjoyed.